The return of Alexander the Great Volkanovski is a week and a half away. Will he show layers, or will Diego Lopez knock his lights out? That is what we're going to discuss. I'm giving my full breakdown and predictions for every single fight on this really good card. Unfortunately, we lost a great fight between Carlos Prates and Jeff Neal, but this card is still great. All right, we've got a lot of big fights, UFC debuts for former Bellator problems, right? Patricio Pitbull was a problem back in the day. Dominick Reyes, Nikita Krylov, Dan Ige, Sean Woodsen, Chase Hooper. We got a lot of good fights. But before we get into this, before I give my predictions for all of these fights, I got to give a quick shout out to the Real Food Cookbook. And today, I'm actually going to be showing you guys a free recipe from that Real Food Cookbook. We're going to be making some brownies. First up, get yourself a blender and add 2 organic bananas, a half a cup of raw honey, but no more because then it'll be too sweet, 2 pasteurized eggs, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, 4 tablespoons of cocoa powder. We're going to blend that up. We're going to add it to a glass baking tray. We're going to put that in the oven for about 12 minutes at 375 Fahrenheit. And you've got yourself some hearty, tasty, healthy homemade brownies. So if you guys would like more recipes like this to teach you how to make comfort foods without all the bullshit, without all the processed ingredients, you can check out the Real Food Cookbook. The link is in the description. Make sure to use code MMA for 30% off. But without further ado, let's get into this. Nora Carnolle versus Hailey Cowan. This is an excellent fight because Nora Carnolle is on a tear at the moment, but Hailey Cowan, a little bit of a sleeper pick here. She's actually looking like she's in pretty decent shape, but if you look close, Nora Carnolle is in decent shape as well. So right off the bat, my usual, whoever's in better shape is going to win the WMMA fight. That's not necessarily what we're going to have to look at in this fight. Both of these women are in good shape. The question is, can Hailey Cowan deal with Nora Carnolle's ability to throw a punch? I think that 8-2 record, it's looking a little bit better than Hailey Cowan's 7-3 record, and I'm going to pick her to win this fight. As we get on to Tresean Gore versus Marco Tulio. Marco Tulio is a big favorite in this fight. He's been knocking everyone out. He knocked out Ihor Potieria. He's been dominating everyone. Tons of power in his hands. He's got a big right hand. He's got big hooks, and he has a nice spinning back kick that he likes to throw to the body. 13-1. He's got a lot of momentum going into this. It's been a long time since this guy has lost. And he's fighting 6-2 Tresean Gore, who's been pretty inactive. But the thing is, he's the underdog. Nobody is that impressed with his striking, but it's his submission game, his grappling, his strength that I think is something to not look past in this matchup. And I'm actually going to go with the underdog in Tresean Gore, because you're looking at the last 2 fights that he has. I believe he has 2 standing guillotines in a row, which is very impressive for Tresean Gore. We saw what he was able to do to Josh Fremd, got him in like a standing guillotine and literally like flipped him over while he was standing on the feet. And then who is the guy that he submitted in his last outing? It was something very similar. First round, the guy that fought Shara Bullet, the other Brazilian guy, he's dating Mackenzie Dern or whatever. I think that Tresean Gore, we look at how easily he was able to get that finish. Marco Tulio could knock Tresean Gore out. He's been KO'd by Cody Brundage, who we know is not that good. And Marco Tulio is better than Cody Brundage on the feet, 100%. But, I'm going to go with the guy that's been proving himself a little bit in the UFC, although not against the best competition, Josh Fremd. And the last guy that he beat, I think he's going to get this one done. I think he's going to get this one done with the wrestling, maybe get a submission. This is a very risky pick. I could definitely see Marco Tulio knocking out Tresean Gore, but Gore has a little bit of pop in his hands. What is the reach? Both guys are the same height, although I think Marco Tulio is probably a little bit taller. Basically the same reach. I'm going with Tresean to win this fight, man. I think he's getting this one done by a submission. All right. He's a very intense first round fighter. And I think that's going to be a big benefit to him when it comes to like getting a big blast double leg or something like that. So I'm going to pick him to win this fight with the grappling. I could get this one really wrong. So, I'm not so confident in it, but I think Tresean Gore could definitely win that fight. As we get on to the next one, Mitch Raposo versus Sumudaerji. Mitch Raposo got cut from the UFC, had a tough go in the UFC early on, got cut, got himself a couple of wins, and then since then he's been losing. He just had a split decision against Andre Lima, and Andre Lima's pretty good. That was a really boring fight. Not a lot happened in it, but Andre Lima also missed weight in that fight as well. But Mitch Raposo is just very small. I think he's like 5'4", 5'5". He has like a 65-inch reach. Sumudaerji has like a 69-inch reach. He's a pretty tall guy in the flyweight division, and he just had a relatively competitive fight with Charles Johnson, and actually a lot did happen in that fight. It was a high-output fight, whereas Mitch Raposo and Andre Lima, if you're just looking at it on paper, a split decision against Andre Lima, that's actually kind of good. Nothing really happened. Again, he's not got the best boxing. I'm just not seeing somebody that's great anywhere, whereas Sumudaerji is dangerous. He can fight the rangy style. He was outstruck a little bit by Charles Johnson, who is known for having amazing cardio. I mean, Charles Johnson pieced up Joshua Van and knocked him out. Like, that's an amazing win. He's very good, very underrated, with decent grappling. And Sumudaerji was able to keep up a little bit on the feet with the high output. I think Sumudaerji, reach advantage, height advantage, long, rangy striking style. I think he's going to be able to win this one by a decision, just outpointing him. As we get on to Sedriques Dumas versus Michal Oleksiejczuk. Michal Oleksiejczuk is the world's most under-the-radar density maxer. If you guys don't know, Michal Oleksiejczuk, one of the densest human beings in the history of the earth. Sedriques Dumas, however, a long, rangy striker who doesn't have great striking. You know what I mean? Like, his striking has improved a little bit. Like, he's got a decent jab. He was able to put the sweet pea special on Dennis Tululin, whereas, I really believed in Dennis Tululin going into that matchup. I mean, I was literally singing, I believe in Tululin. And Sedriques Dumas was able to beat him. You know, he's just a little bit faster, a little bit more dynamic. Dennis Tululin's a bit of a slow poke. But Michal Oleksiejczuk had a competitive fight with Shara Bullet. And before that, dropped Kevin Holland. Like, he's got really, really good power. He's been able to have, like, competitive fights with Khalil Roundtree and Dustin Jacoby. And to be fair, that was at light heavyweight. Michal Oleksiejczuk is now in a harder division, right? He's got the heavier man skill, but then again, we actually saw it against Shara Bullet, who's very light on his feet, who doesn't have a long-rangey jab, but has the long-rangey kicking style. And Michal Oleksiejczuk was landing big, thudding punches on him. Like, he hits hard. He is dense. He's built different. He hits hard. And I think he's got ridiculous power. Not many people are able to drop Kevin Holland. Kevin Holland has a granite chin. Michal was able to drop him. I think this is an easy win for Michal Oleksiejczuk. I think he's going to beat up Sedriques Dumas. I mean, you're looking at his win over, who did he fight? Was it Chidi Njokuani, who he finished as well? He's just super tough, fire hydrant chin, density maxer. I think he's going to TKO Sedriques Dumas in the second round. He'll have a slow start. Eventually, he'll start ripping to the body. He has heavy body shots. And I think he hurts Sedriques Dumas, knocks him out in the second round. Should be a pretty easy victory for him. Very underrated striker is Michal Oleksiejczuk. I mean, the last time we saw him get crushed was against Michel Pereira, who has the lighter man skill and is able to do that in the early rounds. But he got him with body shots. So let's get on to the next one, Darren Elkins versus Julian Erosa. Darren Elkins, if you guys forget, remember, Darren Elkins used to be a beast, man. This guy was on a 6-fight win streak going into the Volk fight. And Volkanovski was the guy to snap his win streak, which was very impressive back in the day. But listen, we're in 2025. We don't need to talk about that. But either way, I'm going with Julian Erosa. Very underrated. He was able to beat Sean Woodsen. He was able to submit Christian Rodriguez. Like, Julian Erosa, if you look at his resume, he has one of the most slept-on resumes in the UFC right now. Very good resume. He is the type of fighter to, like, he'll submit Christian Rodriguez. He'll, be able to beat Sean Woodsen. And then all of a sudden he'll get slept by like no one, like a nobody or whatever. But I think he's going to get this one done. Darren Elkins, very old. He's still relatively tough. He's got high output, but he just doesn't have a lot of power. And Julian Erosa has a really tricky submission game. People just tend to throw themselves into his guillotines. He's got a really good guillotine as well. I think he should win this fight pretty easily. Yeah, I'm going to go with Julian Erosa by a submission or a decision, okay? As we get on to Chase Hooper versus Jim Miller. This would have been a great fight if they made this like a year ago, but I think at this point, Chase Hooper is, I think he's really improved a lot. And I think that Chase Hooper's leveling up rapidly, and he's getting close to his prime, and he's starting to like completely dominate people, completely ragdoll people. You look at what he did to Vyacheslav Borshev, dropped him with an overhand, and then just completely dominated him. Like, Chase Hooper's grappling is very good, even against other grapplers, like, what's his name? I forget his name. The Monkey King, Jordan Levitt. Even against Jordan Levitt, Chase Hooper is able to easily outgrapple him and choke him out in one round. Jim Miller has good grappling. He's pretty crafty, right? I mean, that's one thing you got to give Jim Miller. He is very crafty. And he's got a couple of good tricks up his sleeve on the feet. He's one of these guys where he can blow you out of the water early on, but Chase Hooper is no longer is one of those guys that has the octagon jitters, right? I mean, you could say Jim Miller could have a similar approach to that of, what's his name? The guy that's like flatlining everybody at 145, face planting them. Who's the guy that beat Chase Hooper at 145 that sent him up to lightweight, sent him packing? Lighter man's skill was too much. Who is that guy? The guy that was booked to fight Barboza, dude. I forget his name, man. He's been flatlining everybody. You know exactly who I'm talking about, dude. You know I know. You know I know who this is. All right, I'm a hardcore fan. He's actually my favorite fighter. I just forgot his name. He's one of the like most. He if you were to look up like the average sum of like a human being, like how a human looks, that guy would come up. He has like the most regular, plain look ever, where it's easy to sort of forget about him, but he's flatlining everybody. The guy that was booked to fight Barboza, that would have flatlined Barboza. He's a killer be killed fighter. You know I know who okay, we know who it is. We don't need to talk about it. You know I know. Knocked out Chase Hooper. He's been sending people packing, was booked to fight Barboza. You know I know who I'm talking about. But either way, Jim Miller only does that to guys that are making like their UFC debut, you know? And yeah, you know, Jim Miller sort of got the frog legs, man. He sort of leaps into his attacks. He's got a really good ability to land that leg kick at the end of a three-piece combo, land 1-2, then leg kick, right? He's very crafty. He's got good cardio. He's got a decent rear naked choke. But Chase Hooper's going to punch this old man in the face really hard, set up a takedown, and once he gets him on the ground, he is going to ferociously beat him up and finish him. I think that Chase Hooper's going to win this fight by a ferocious onslaught on the ground. And I really do think Chase Hooper is one of the best grapplers in the sport. I do. You know, people are talking about Pimblett. You know, he's an underrated grappler. Chase Hooper has been absolutely destroying people on the ground. Like a different level of dominance. And that's, you know, he was a black belt in his UFC debut, which was a long time ago. Still not even in his prime. I think he'll get Jim Miller down, and I think he'll either get a ground and pound TKO or he'll just submit him. So, yeah, Chase Hooper should get this one done. I think that if you're going to have the chance to flatline Chase Hooper, you got to be someone with brick wall takedown defense with a good chin. You know, you got to be like a Raumbetsky. If you're Batiste Raumbetsky, you could probably sleep Chase Hooper. But not now. Not Jim Miller, he's a little bit too withered at this point. Very crafty, but a little bit too withered. I think this is the type of matchup where being crafty, like you're just going to get beat by the next level of like extreme talent that are firing on all cylinders. Jim Miller, the craft comes into play against people that are not that great. So Chase Hooper should get this one done dominantly. As we get on to Xiaonan versus Virna Jandiroba. Man, dude. Oh, it's Garcia. It's Garcia. Steve Garcia. Yeah! Steve Garcia, dude, I got it. Before anyone comments, Brad doesn't know Steve Garcia. I do know Steve Garcia. I just forgot his name. Forgetting someone's name when you have the encyclopedia of the freaking roster in your head. We have like the roster in our heads. Like we know every UFC fighter. Every once in a while, you're gonna forget somebody. I forgot Steve. Steve Garcia is the name. Xiaonan, Virna Jandiroba. I'm going with Virna Jandiroba. Xiaonan is very good, but Virna Jandiroba has good grappling, and Xiaonan's grappling is not that good, man. She's got a really good left hook. We saw her sleep Jessica Andrade. And to be fair, I mean, Virna Jandiroba is no Zhang Weili, so it's going to be tough for her to have the same sort of performance as Zhang Weili, and Xiaonan's very dangerous on the feet. She hurt Zhang Weili at a moment, but I think Virna Jandiroba is going to be able to get Xiaonan down and sort of stink up a decision. So, Yeah, let's get on to the next one. Dan Ige versus Sean Woodsen. This is actually a really good fight. I've been thinking about picking Sean Woodsen for a while just because Sean Woodsen just seems to be an absolute nightmare for anybody that's short. And I was thinking that in his last outing where he was fighting that tall guy where he knocked him out in the first round, the guy from Mexico, I was thinking, man, this guy could be able to actually give him some problems. But the guy just had no boxing defense. He just wasn't very good. He was even skinnier than Sean Woodsen, it seemed. And Sean Woodsen pieced him up, TKO'd him. His boxing looks improved. Woodsen's got good striking. And the thing is, you look at his performances against guys that are actually decent strikers, like Charles Jourdain is a decent striker. Sean Woodsen is just able to win a very easy decision where it's like Jourdain can't land a thing on him. And we've seen Jourdain like have, high output performances against guys like Nathaniel Wood. But as soon as you're in front of Sean Woodsen, he's so good at keeping range that it's almost impossible for people to close the distance. And we saw the same thing against Caceres. Again, kind of a boring fight, but Caceres is not like a short guy like Dan Ige, and he had trouble actually landing punches. So I was thinking maybe Sean Woodsen could beat up Dan Ige and sort of pick him apart, but I just think that Dan Ige is a little bit too durable, and he's sort of got that really good defense, the high guard defense, where you just know even if Dan Ige is getting teeped to the body and kicked at range and peppered up with the jab, you just know Dan Ige is the perfect kind of fighter to be able to make it work, to be able to get in on the inside to find the shots. Like, he has a high guard, he has decent head movement, he has the Coach Eric Nixick footwork, he's got the Extreme Couture footwork. I think he is good enough to be able to close the distance on Sean Woodsen. And when you do land on Sean Woodsen, he doesn't have the best chin. He obviously has a brutal weight cut. I mean, the guy is 6'3", 6'2", in the featherweight division. Like, his weight cut's brutal. He's not built to take a punch. And Dan Ige, you look at his fights against taller opponents. Lerone Murphy, taller than him, dropped him. Andre Fili, and I think Woodsen is better than Andre Fili, but Andre Fili, tall, rangy striker in the featherweight division. Dan Ige drops him, hurts him with an overhand, knocks him out. I think Dan Ige is the perfect fighter to be able to tag Sean Woodsen with a big shot. And I think that 3 rounds is more than enough. I think he'll be able to find the shot and put him away. As far as taking down Sean Woodsen, that seems to be the thing that nobody will ever be able to do. I am convinced that no UFC fighter can take down Sean Woodsen, but a novice can. Sean Woodsen's takedown defense is a mystery because nobody has ever been able to take him down. And he's got, like, I know there's this idea that, well, no, man, actually, against Adesanya, the taller strikers, it's almost impossible to get them down. But then there's the other school of thought where it's like these, like, taller, lanky frames, you could just, like, sort of bulldoze them to the ground, right? And I look at Sean Woodsen, I'm like, that guy looks like he could get tipped over by a gust of wind. I think the UFC fighters are so technical, they're almost too technical for their own good. You can't take down Sean Woodsen because of his frame, and he's sort of technical, so he can stuff it. You genuinely have to just go all out as far as... You have to literally just see red. You have to see red when you're going for the takedown. You just... Come on! You have to get him down. Just bulldoze him. If Dan Ige goes in there and says, fuck this guy's takedown defense, and goes after him, I think he gets him down. But I'm telling you, man, Sean Woodsen, like... He's the kind of guy to stuff every Makhachev takedown, but as soon as I get in there with him with zero technique, I'm just blitzkrieging him and taking him down. But I mean, I'm joking around, obviously. I'm obviously joking. But the point that I'm making is I don't think Dan Ige is going to win this with the grappling, although he has some decent grappling. But I think that even though Woodsen will be able to land on Ige and piece him up a little bit, Ige's durable, he's tough. He's got good inside boxing. I think he's good enough to be able to land the punch. And I think that sometimes the taller striker is a nightmare for the shorter striker, but I don't think Sean Woodsen's fast enough, Usually when that's the case, it's like Dan Ige versus someone like a Yair, where you're super fast and you're the taller guy. Then it's kind of easy to piece up your opponent. But Woodsen's one of these taller guys that's kind of slow. And I think that's the worst matchup when they're fighting like a shorter, explosive, stocky boxer like a Dan Ige who can beat him to the punch, slip off the center line, and land a big overhand up top like a sack of potatoes. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Dan Ige to knock out Sean Woodsen in the first round. As we get on to Nikita Krylov versus Dominick Reyes. I'm going with Nikita Krylov. I think he KOs Dominick Reyes in the first round. I think Nikita Krylov is very underrated, okay? Not only is he underrated, he's underratedly entertaining too. You know, not just his skills, but his entertainment-wise, he's very good. He also reminds me a lot of Yuri Prochazka. If you look at the way Nikita Krylov fights, even the way he kind of looks, like he just kind of has, even his frame, everything, the way he throws punches, the way he lands a big knee. If you look at the Gustafsson fight, immediately just big, you know, he charges into his right hand like a Yuri. You know, Yuri really flows with his right hand. Nikita Krylov does the same thing. And once he has you hurt, he's throwing hammer fists. You know, it's like the Johnny Walker, Paul Craig moment where Paul Craig's in on a single leg and Johnny Walker's, hammer fisting him on the feet. And then he has a moment where he knees Alexander Gustafsson, and he has this creativity mixed in with this very goofy, unorthodox style. It really reminds me of Yuri, and he has the power too. And I think that type of fighter is a nightmare for Dominick Reyes at this point in his career, okay? Like, Dominick Reyes was doing all right against Yuri Prochazka, but that was before he had gotten KO'd by Yuri Prochazka, right? He was doing well until Yuri was winning, but Reyes was in there until he got spinning elbowed. And then after that, he gets flatlined by Ryan Spann, and he's on a 2-fight win streak. He got the win over Jacoby, and that was really impressive. Jacoby just brutally knocked out Vitor Petrino, and that win's looking even better in hindsight because, I mean, maybe after the Reyes KO over Jacoby, you could say, well, Jacoby's a bit of a pillow puncher, but, you know, actually he's got some pop. We know he knocked out Kennedy Nizichukwu too. That was a really good win for Reyes. Reyes is still top-notch, but then again, like the light heavyweight division is not that deep with talent. But you look at the win against Anthony Smith. I mean, listen, Smith has never been that great, but there was a time where Smith was like, okay. Like when he was fighting Spann the first time, not the rematch, but the first time, where he was hurting Spann and then he submitted him. When he was fighting Glover, first couple of rounds against Glover, he was piecing up Glover Teixeira before the last 3 rounds where, you know, he got beat up really badly. There was a time where Anthony Smith was decent. A couple years later, Anthony Smith is horrible. A couple years later, he's in there with Dominick Reyes after that. So decent Anthony Smith, then he's terrible a couple years later. And now he gets beat by Dominick Reyes a couple years later. Like the version of Anthony Smith that Dominick Reyes fought could be the worst UFC fighter. Like not only did we see Anthony Smith get into the usual fetal position on the ground, like just looking totally out of it, where you're starting to feel bad for him. But even on the feet, Anthony Smith started coping the second Dominick Reyes started landing on him. Like Anthony Smith was nodding. Like Reyes would hit him with a jab and Anthony Smith would say, yeah, come on. And then he would hit him with 5 more jabs and Anthony Smith would start emoting on him while he was losing. But there were moments in the first round where Anthony Smith is still landing some shots. Like he's still able to land a couple of punches. And I'm not just saying a couple, like, you know, there were moments where Anthony was sort of in there, man. He was doing his thing. That is the worst version of Anthony Smith. And yes, Nikita Krylov has been out of the cage for a while. He's been out for 2 years. The last time he fought was against Ryan Spann on the Merab versus Jan card, right? I mean, going into that card, we would have never have thought Merab would be the bantamweight GOAT. Now he's the bantamweight GOAT. That's how long it's been. But Dominick Reyes, and I've said this for a while, and I'm a fan of Dominick Reyes. I'm rooting for his comeback. I'd actually like to see him win, although I do like Nikita Krylov as well. I just think that his game is a little bit simple, where for whatever reason, dude, it was good enough to beat Jones, which is just crazy. And a lot of that was Jones probably underestimated him a little bit, but also Reyes had the perfect mentality, give Jones no respect. He has good takedown defense. He's a good athlete. So, like, that was kind of perfect for him so that the grappling never came into play for Jones, but also just got into boxing range and started letting go the 1-2, giving Jones no respect. No hesitancy at all from Dominick Reyes. Like a perfect stylistic matchup for him. But against these heavy hitters, guys with decent technique like Blachowicz, Dominick Reyes is in there after the Jones fight with Blachowicz, and he's just relying on 1-2, and a big 1-2, and a big 1-2, and a big leg kick. That's kind of Dominick Reyes' style, where you got Jan, who's able to, think with, creative strikes, man. He's able to find the openings, man. He's got some slick counters, and he's got that wicked body kick to your ribs. Then Yuri, it's like Reyes 1-2, 1-2, and Yuri's got the elbows, and he's got the knees, and he's got the weird angles, right? I just think Nikita Krylov is a puzzle, and I think for Reyes, yes, he could chin Nikita Krylov. That's possible, but I don't know if Reyes has the biggest power in this division. I mean, again, Yuri has a granite chin. Yuri's not the best example, but he hit Yuri a lot. He hit Anthony Smith a lot. Smith has a decent chin, but still wasn't able to put him down. And then what else are we talking about? What other fights has Reyes had? Like Blachowicz, Jones even. Jones has a good chin, but Reyes doesn't have the most ridiculous power. He's a light heavyweight with good power, 100%. But I think Nikita Krylov, he's just awkward, He's awkward, and I think once, Reyes is in front of someone and they realize, okay, this is just a 1-2, they're able to kind of set things up and go to the next layer. And I don't know if Reyes has the layers to his game. He's got good grappling, but again, I don't think an opportunity is there in the grappling this time because Nikita Krylov has good grappling too. He's got a good submission game. So he's very dangerous on the ground himself, So will Nikita Krylov offensively grapple? I don't think so because Dominick Reyes also has really good takedown defense. So this comes down to a striking battle. And again, Krylov is dangerous on the feet. He's got a very long reach. I think he has the reach advantage. 77.5-inch reach, similar reach. Reyes' arms look very short. They're not that short, but Krylov fights with a longer punching style. And then he's got this weird, funky Yuri Prohaska-like power with creativity as well. I just think that, Reyes, granted, he's not been chinned in his last couple of fights, but he has been knocked out a bunch before. His chin clearly isn't as good as it used to be. I could see Nikita Krylov cracking Dominick Reyes and putting him out. Again, I think Reyes, his ability to make adjustments, it's not all there. And although Nikita Krylov is wild and he could get caught, definitely, and we could see Reyes knock him out, I just think that Nikita, his wildness and his unorthodox style is actually going to sort of confuse Reyes a little bit. And I think preparing for Dominick Reyes, the 1-2s, I think it's very doable. So, yeah, I think Krylov is going to win this fight by a KO. Let's get on to the next one. Yair Rodriguez versus Patricio Pitbull. Somehow, some way, these Bellator fighters just cannot lose in their UFC debuts. And I always pick against them. I picked against MVP in his Bellator debut. In his UFC debut. I picked against Michael Chandler in his UFC debut. I always pick against these other fighters they've been there, they've done that in other promotions, and they come over when they're a little bit older. I usually pick against them, but not this time. I just think Pitbull's going to tag him with a good shot. I just think Pitbull's got another level, another. I'm not going to say it again. I think he's just too many levels ahead. No, I'm joking. Patricio Pitbull is 37 years old, and he's essentially a poor man's Volkanovski. I'm sorry, dude. He's a low output. Like, we're talking about the Volkanovski. Why? Because Pitbull's short. He's like 5'6", 5'7". I know this guy chinned Michael Chandler. I get that, but he's short, he's stocky, and he's got low output, dude. And yeah, there are moments against, Bellator opponents where, a slip rip counter from Patricio Pitt. I don't know why I do the freaking British accent. I think that's just because I associate like really hardcore fans with like British accents. You know what I mean? Like a Cage Warriors enthusiast, like a Dan Hardy, right? Like MMA guru. I always associate like these guys that are going to pick, I'm getting into the nitty gritty. I'm picking the Cage Warriors guy over the UFC champ. But listen, Yair Rodriguez is going to fucking mince this dude up. Dude, Yair Rodriguez is putting on for the UFC right now. And to be fair, Yair Rodriguez's grappling has looked pathetic. But who is taking Yair down? Brian Ortega? I've said this about Ortega ever since this channel existed and I mentioned Ortega. I've always said Ortega's takedowns are underrated. There was this talk about Ortega can't wrestle. And yeah, I understand he's not like a dynamic wrestler and whatnot, but he's always been decent with getting takedowns up against the fence. He took down Max Holloway a bunch of times in their fight. Max got right back up, but he always gets up when anyone takes him down. But there's this idea that him getting beat by Ortega was pathetic. And obviously, a lot of that has to do with the fact that he had just fought for the belt and he had beat Ortega the first time. But like him getting submitted and out-grappled by Brian Ortega, in no way should that make you think that Yair Rodriguez is like shit on the ground. Like, I understand he's weak. I understand his takedown defense is not good. But Yair is still decent off of his back. Like, if you think about the people that have beat him up, Frankie Edgar, way back in the day when Yair wasn't in his prime, but also Frankie Edgar is really good ground and pound. Okay? Volkanovski, one of the best grapplers, one of the best ground and pound artists, and Brian Ortega. Like, those are the guys. To be fair, Jeremy Stephens was, but Jeremy Stephens was able to take him down, but I'm talking about people that were able to, like, beat him up really badly and finish him. Volk, Ortega, one of the nastiest submission artists, really, really good. Like, it's rare that we see Ortega work from point A to point B to get someone down, work his way into mount. Like, that's a nightmare if he gets you into that position, if he slows the fight down. And to be fair, I actually picked Ortega in Yair's first fight. I said, I think Ortega's going to, survive. I think he's going to get his ass whipped, but I just think at some point he finds a takedown and submits Yair. Patricio Pitbull is not that great on the ground. Like, he's got decent grappling. He's got okay grappling, but he's a striker for the most part. He's a big, gnarly right hand. Not an overhand. He's got a nice, very slick, straight right hand, and he's got good counters, but he's low output, and he's not a puzzle solver like Volk. Patricio Pitbull, he's slip-rip counters against like these old heads in Bellator. Knocks out Michael Chandler in 2001, dude, in frickin' 1992. I'm sorry, but like, this is another level. We saw Volkanovski, one of the best output strikers the world has ever seen, like, recognize that he can't go tit for tat with Yair on like an output level. He has to pick his shots perfectly with low output. And that's Volk. Super high fight IQ. Can walk you on to something. Can set something up. And Patricio could set something up 100%. I get it. But Volk is good enough to not get fucking lit up. We also have to remember Volk in the first couple rounds of that fight with Yair had negated the striking threat by taking him down. Will Patricio do that? Maybe. He would be very wise to. Maybe he could do it. I could see him maybe winning this fight if he gets the takedown, but I have a feeling that the takedown's not going to come so easily. That Yair is going to show that actually Ortega, Volk, Edgar have out-grappled me, but you're not going to be able to do it so easily. And you know who I'm going to bring up? Josh Emmett. Wrestling background, not known as a wrestler, but wrestling background, short, stocky. Got Yair Rodriguez down in the first round, couldn't do fuck all with it. Got him down in the second round after he was hurt, got submitted. Submitted Brian Ortega in the first fight. He's a wild man on the ground. Patricio Pitbull's low output. This is Patricio Pitbull. Bellator fights, whenever you're excited for a Bellator, like a big Bellator fight, it winds up being like a staring contest. That's literally what every Bellator striking match is. It's like Darren Till versus Wonderboy every single time, entertainment-wise. Patricio Pitbull and, Jackson from the Florida gym. They've been having the most heated rivalry in Bellator history. So much trash talk, and then they get in the cage, and it's like, ole, ole, ole. I always associate ole, ole, ole with like a boring 5-round British title fight or some shit like that. Not even that. Like a 5-round fight night, Darren Till versus Wonderboy Thompson. Ole, 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 ole. And it's like, snapping kick to the hand from Darren Till. And, the commentators are freaking out because it's one strike every 5 minutes. That's like every Bellator fight, dude. It's like Pitbull versus like a mid-fighter, and it's like a 5-round chess match. Ole, 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 ole. And Pitbull has thrown one right hand every 5 minutes. And then there's like one big moment in round 4. Dude, Yair Rodriguez is going to freaking piece this dude up. All right? It's going to be like, dude, Yair dropped Ortega twice. The first person to ever drop Brian Ortega. Before Diego did it, Yair dropped him twice. Yair was head kicking Volkanovski. Before Volkanovski tagged him with the switch stance setup in the 3rd round, Yair was winning the round on output. This guy was going tit for tat with Max Holloway. Yair is a vicious kicker. He's a vicious striker. He's going to be landing head kicks. He's going to be landing body kicks. He's going to be landing slick right hands. Like, I was worried for Volk when Volk was fighting Yair. I was thinking, dude, this is like a really tricky fight because fighting Yair, it's like a pop quiz every second. You don't know what's going to come in your direction. But I think Volkanovski is like the guy that's maybe smart enough to deal with that and not get lit up. And like Ortega won, but he wasn't the guy to be able to not get lit up. Like, everybody gets lit up if they're not at that like pound for pound #1 level where they still get tagged up a little bit. But everyone else gets completely lit up. And then Max Holloway. Max Holloway was getting lit up. But the thing is, Max Holloway has a granite chin, and he was also lighting up Yair. So it wasn't like as crazy because like both guys were going tit for tat. Patricio Pitbull's a low volume striker, big right hand. He could hurt Yair, although Yair is very tough. He has a good chin. I could see him maybe. He gets Yair down, and man, this is just, Yair's got to work on it. He has a slow grappling performance. I could see it, but I just think Yair's going to fucking piece this guy up and TKO him. I think he's going to TKO him in round 2. So I say that and watch Patricio Pitbull like land a big right hand. Watch Patricio Pitbull have like Michael Chandler's performance that he had against Dan Hooker, right? So I could get this one wrong. I know Pitbull's pretty good. I get it. And I know that when these Bellator fighters make their UFC debuts, they really step it up big time because they've been fighting like, you know, they've had a couple big fights, but it's been a few years since they had a big fight, even though they're fighting for the title. It's like, you know, been a couple years since they've had a big fight. They finally get their UFC debut and they really take it to the next level. So I could see Patricio having a better performance than he normally would. I still think Yair is just a nightmare on the feet. I think he's going to win this fight. So I'm going with Yair by a TKO in round 2. Maybe like a body kick TKO, something like that. So let's get on to the next one. As we get on to Bryce Mitchell versus Jean Silva. I believe in Mitchell. I'm changing my pick, and I'll tell you why, okay? Jean Silva could flatline Bryce Mitchell and could do an emote on him and have like a viral moment. I totally understand that. And I'm going to talk about people being locked in a little bit, but I've been seeing, you know, the interviews, I've been seeing the stare downs, and Jean Silva's a very intense fighter, but Bryce Mitchell has a different layer of intensity. And obviously it's because of his faith, right? He's fighting for a higher purpose. Who does that remind you of? When you see Bryce Mitchell stare down Jean Silva, you know who it reminds me of? It reminds me of...
Everything is possible in your life when you believe.
He beat him one time. Go. And take it what you want to do. I'm picking Mitchell. And I think he's going to have the best performance of his career. And I understand that a little bit of this is based on the vibe. But because he seems so locked in for this fight, I think that if we see Bryce Mitchell get a takedown, his takedown entries are actually pretty decent. If he gets Jean Silva down, I could see Mitchell having a sense of urgency to not only get a finish, not because Jean Silva could sub him or something like that, no. But Mitchell, he knows this is a huge fight. I think he's going to really go for a finish, really try to lay in the ground and pound, and have an extremely aggressive approach with his grappling. And I just don't think that Jean Silva, even though he's probably decent on the ground, he's totally not proven it. But Bryce Mitchell has the striking that's at least good enough to set up a takedown. And I think that there is a decent likelihood that Bryce, you know, what's his name, wasn't able to do it. Drew Dober was getting shucked off. I mean, I'll say this. Jean Silva looked pretty impressive against Drew Dober. He was shucking him off, sweeping him, like Petr Yan in him when he was shooting the takedowns. But that's Drew Dober, right? That's the big marauder, the big oaf coming your way. And he's great on the feet. Drew Dober's pretty good. But come on, dude. This guy's not a slick takedown artist. Absolutely not. Bryce Mitchell has the lighter man skill. He's got that sticky grappling where once he gets a hold of you, he's sort of like Chase Hooper, but it starts with the takedown. Chase Hooper's this like weird grappler where, you know, he can sort of twist you into a pretzel when he's in the worst position. You put Chase Hooper in a rear naked choke, and the next thing you know, Chase Hooper's hit you with a triangle, and he's reversed the position. Bryce is like that, but even in the fucking clinch, dude, where he's able to get the back very easily. And what I'm saying is, Bryce Mitchell took down Ilia Topuria and kept him on the ground for about a minute. Had a 30-25 against Edson Barboza. Dan Ige is a strong, compact guy. He's got decent defensive grappling, and Bryce Mitchell, once he got a hold of him, was just able to keep the dominant position. And I think if Bryce Mitchell gets Jean Silva down, and I know this sounds like, well, Bryce is going to see red this time. I'm not talking about that. I just think that this is the fight where Bryce is going to have the best performance of his career if he's given an opportunity to have the success. If he's given a dominant position, even though Bryce doesn't have the best ground and pound, he doesn't have the best submission game, I think in this fight, particularly against Jean Silva, who Bryce is fucking fired up to fight, I think we're going to see Bryce Mitchell get Jean Silva down and finish him on the ground, whether it's a submission or a ground and pound TKO. And I'm going to go with Bryce Mitchell, second round finish against Jean Silva. I think he's going to get Jean Silva down in the first round. I think he's going to dominate him. And I think Jean Silva is going to overswing. He throws a lot of wild techniques. I've seen him get frustrated in fights and really go after the KO. And it's not like every punch this guy lands, you're going to go out cold. Although he does have that power, I'm telling you, this guy could sleep Bryce Mitchell in the first round. We all are aware of that. He could definitely do it. That's why I've been picking him. But I just think that, who put away Bryce Mitchell? Josh Emmett with the biggest, gnarliest overhand that the world has ever seen. That was the punch that put him away. But we've seen Bryce Mitchell eat some big punches before. He is relatively tough. Ilia hurt him, but that was like a perfect combination moving forward. And that was after a round and a half of a scrappy fight where Ilia's already stuffed like 8 takedowns. He got taken down once, but he was stuffing a lot of them. The other thing is this guy just makes a lot of mistakes. Like against, what's his name? Charles Jourdain. Granted, he wasn't expecting Jourdain to shoot a lot of takedowns, but Jean Silva was like pulling for guillotines and trying to latch up these crazy submissions, and he was fighting Jourdain with absolutely no respect in the world. If he chooses to fight Bryce Mitchell like that, where he's just going for these highlight reel moments, Hail Mary submissions, like you can't do that against a grappler like Mitchell, who's the most locked in he's ever been. So I think Jean Silva needs to be incredibly patient in this one, which he is looking very patient these days. If you look at his performance against Melsik Bagdasaryan, he was very patient in that fight, which again, that could be great for him. And he could hurt Bryce Mitchell in the first round and put him away. I just think Mitchell's control is on a different level. Jean Silva's takedown defense, it's looking decent, but it's still not all that proven. Again, like Drew Dober, he may be big and strong, but he doesn't have half the technique of a grappler as a Bryce Mitchell. Let's be serious. We're talking about a big Ophi Muay Thai striker. I don't mean Drew Dober is like this non-technical fighter. He is, but grappling, he's not got it. He's not. Drew Dober's literally like a Curtis Blades looking for his takedowns, bending over and at the hip and going for the double leg. Point A to point B and to point C. Bryce Mitchell is effortless with his grappling. Once he gets Jean Silva down, I think he's going to make his life miserable. I think he's going to be hitting him with noogies. He's going to be hitting him with the Colby Covington neck crank noogies. Talking to him, I think he's going to be elbowing him. And I think he's going to get that submission second round. Once Bryce Mitchell starts to dominate, this is his fight. Because that's kind of how it is with Mitchell. Like you look at his Barboza fight, it was sort of tricky at first. Once he dropped Barboza and banked that first round on the ground, it was easy takedowns. Super slick entries. Once he has a moment, once he gets the takedown, this fight's a wrap. And I think we see Bryce Mitchell actually get the finish this time. I could see it. You guys can see it. I could see Jean Silva flatlining him, but I could also see Bryce Mitchell not just banking the rounds via control and actually like leveling up on the ground and having like a really damaged first performance on the ground, looking for submissions, looking for ground and pound. Just because we've seen Emmett flatline Mitchell, usually he's not that easy to put away. Like we've seen Mitchell stand in front of guys like Dan Ige. We've seen him stand in front of Topuria. And yes, he got hurt by Topuria, but again, Bryce Mitchell was on the feet with him, doing his thing, landing a couple of decent kicks, head kicks every now and then. He was in there for like 8 minutes before Topuria caught him and hurt him badly in the second round. Dan Ige. Ige was winning the stand-up exchanges. Ige honestly arguably had, could have won that fight. But, if Jean Silva's a better grappler than Ige, I think he wins this fight. but he's just not proven it yet. And again, we've not seen people just put out Bryce Mitchell that easily, where I'm just going to pick that to happen. Like, yeah, Bryce Mitchell's this slow poke on the feet. He's going to get chinned every time he fights someone with power. Jean Silva, he has the aura. He has the it factor. He's got the X factor. I could definitely see him winning this, but I'm going to go with Mitchell. I think Mitchell's the underdog. I'm going to go with Mitchell on this one. So yeah, I'm going to pick him by a second round finish. But we're talking like 52% Bryce Mitchell, 48% Jean Silva. I just think that Mitchell, I think his grappling is going to be a problem. I think it's underrated. I think he'll be able to sneak in a takedown, get it, and win this fight. As we get on to Michael Chandler and Paddy Pimblett. A lot of people are going with Paddy Pimblett, and I have been going with Paddy Pimblett. I've been thinking the whole time, you know what? Pimblett's the younger guy. Maybe Prime Chandler gives him issues. But it's just the ways that their careers are going. Chandler's declining rapidly. He gets worse from fight to fight. And Pimblett, he's sort of got the plot armor a little bit. You know, he's like the star. He's supposed to win. Chandler always makes mistakes. He's going to roll himself into a submission or walk himself onto a head kick. Pimblett doesn't really knock a lot of people out, but I guess this is going to be the moment where he finally gets the big KO. And I've been saying, you know, Pimblett's probably going to get this one done. He's good enough to maybe be able to beat Michael Chandler, but I'm telling you guys, I've been watching some Paddy Pimblett fights, and I rewatched Michael Chandler versus Charles Oliveira, and Paddy Pimblett's not going to beat Michael Chandler, all right? It's not happening. I'm sorry. Like, Paddy Pimblett is not that good. And I'm not saying that he's not got great grappling. He's got great grappling. His striking has improved a little bit, but it's still just atrocious when it comes to, like, you know, defending punches. He's wide open to getting hit. Like, him and Tony Ferguson had, like, a close first round before he hurt Tony at the end of the first round. It was relatively close. Tony was tagging him up. Paddy Pimblett was overswinging him, leaving his chin on a silver platter. And you may say, well, Michael Chandler does the same thing. Well, you know, Michael Chandler fought Charles Oliveira last time. And yes, to be fair, he sort of changed up his approach and fought very patient, which is not what works for him. But, like, he's out there in front of Charles Oliveira, who is just worlds ahead of Paddy Pimblett on the feet. And that was a very defensively sound Oliveira, high guard, not making a lot of mistakes, really picking his shots, being very careful, and hitting hard. I mean, Chandler was getting tagged up with some pretty big punches. Oliveira, great shot selection. Oliveira couldn't put him away. Oliveira couldn't hurt him. And Oliveira was very defensively sound. And even in the early rounds, before Michael Chandler had that, like, big fifth round where he hurt Oliveira, whenever he would move forward, he would tag Oliveira, land some pretty big shots. But again, it's like we're talking about completely different levels of fighters here. You know, Paddy Pimblett, watch him side by side in his fights with Tony Ferguson, Bobby Green, when he's doing his striking, and compare that to the side-by-side frame of Charles Oliveira. Like, different leagues. And it's like, all right, well, Michael Chandler got dropped by Tony Ferguson. I understand that. I get that. He can get dropped. I'm not saying Paddy can't win this fight. He could. Again, Michael Chandler could freaking roll himself into a submission, an arm bar. He could, again, start emoting and Paddy catches him with a front kick or something. It's possible. But I just don't think Pimblett's got good striking, and I don't think he's got half the wrestling of a Charles Oliveira. That's the one thing about Oliveira that's been incredibly underrated throughout his entire career is the wrestling. I've been saying it. You know, it's like he's sort of similar to Petr Yan insofar as there are still to this day people that when they talk about Petr Yan in passing, they'll say something like, yeah, his grappling really needs work. It's like, dude, Petr Yan's one of the best grapplers in his division. He's a great wrestler offensively too. Doesn't get the credit he deserves. Similarly, Charles Oliveira, everyone knows that he's a great jiu-jitsu guy, but he doesn't get the credit he deserves for his double leg, for his takedowns. The way he was taking down Michael Chandler, it was effortless, right? I mean, I know this is a while ago, and I know Tony Ferguson is not that impressive of a name anymore, but I mean, one fight removed from the Justin Gaethje fight that Ferguson had, the first one that broke his win streak, when Charles Oliveira fought him, he was picking Tony Ferguson up, throwing him around. I'm telling you, Charles Oliveira has a really good double leg. He's got great entries. He's very strong. He can set up like a nice trip up against the fence, body lock takedowns. Pimblett's got great jiu-jitsu. If he can get Michael Chandler down, I could see him controlling him. But the thing is, it'll be much harder for him to take Chandler down. Not only because his wrestling is not nearly as good. Remember, this guy really struggled to take down Jared Gordon, who's got okay takedown defense, but he really struggled to take down Gordon. He sort of struggled to take down Ferguson. It wasn't until he hurt him in the first round where he was able to get him down, and there were a couple of weird scrambles where he wound up in top position, but we're talking about this guy's wrestling. Sure, he submitted Bobby Green, but Green literally threw himself into that. Threw himself into it after he, I think he tried to intercept a kick of Paddy Pimblett and just sort of ran in head first. I don't know if Michael Chandler is going to do some stupid shit like that. And I know that's kind of crazy to say because Chandler always does stupid shit in the octagon, but I don't see Pimblett just easily taking down Chandler and bringing this fight into the realm in which he feels super comfortable easily. I think in order to get there, he's really going to have to work for it hard, and he's going to expend a lot of energy, and we've seen him look tired in later rounds against Ferguson. And even though Chandler doesn't have the best gas tank, hey, it seems like some of the best rounds that he has sometimes are at the end of a fight. Round 5, Charles Oliveira. Literally picking up Oliveira when Oliveira's on his back and slamming him down. He did that twice. Had the energy for that. Had the energy for Yoel Romero, Michael. Well, I mean, I don't have to say Yoel. He's Michael Chandler. He has that explosive energy. He had round 5 Michael Chandler explosive energy, that we would normally see him have in the first round in the Oliveira fight. And what it comes down to is Oliveira has a significant threat on the feet. And not only does he have a significant threat, he has a very technical Muay Thai style where he was more defensively sound than usual in his last outing. And Pimblett just doesn't have that. And I don't think he represents the same threat as Charles Oliveira. And one of the reasons why Oliveira was able to set up those takedowns is because he's so dangerous on the feet, because he was landing uppercuts and really good hooks, sneaky hooks that Michael Chandler couldn't see, and rocking him every once in a while. That's what got Michael Chandler to worry about the striking. I don't think Paddy Pimblett, with his, his windmill punches, his windmill combinations, he's got his chin in the air and he's throwing leg kicks. He's got very good leg kicks. I don't know if him throwing a hard leg kick every once in a while and a jumping teep to the body with a couple of winging combinations where he's looking up at the air, I don't know if that's going to be enough of a threat to open up the takedown so easily for him. And I think Michael Chandler, if you've got Tony Ferguson in there landing some good, dirty boxing in the pocket against Paddy Pimblett, I think Michael Chandler can blitz through him and land a big right hand. If Chandler's able to crack Charles Oliveira in, a couple of moments in the early rounds of their rematch, and then in the 5th round, he rocks him, and I understand he eye poked him, but he sort of rocked him at the same time. I think he can do it to Pimblett, who, again, you just watch his striking. It's just the boxing defense in particular is piss poor. It's improved, but there's this idea that, Pimblett's just improving and he's passing every test and he's leveling up. I mean, if we're actually looking at the performances themselves, I mean, he fought one of the oldest Tony Fergusons to date and he couldn't finish Tony Ferguson. And then he goes out there against Bobby Green, and Green really just gives him the submission on a silver platter. I mean, again, Pimblett throws a kick, Green dives in head first. I mean, who the fuck is defending kicks like Bobby Green in that instance? These wins are being given to him, and I get there's a decent, reasonable argument to be made when it comes to Michael Chandler gives people fights as well. But Chandler's just wild. He's there's a chance he just throws the fight and walks himself into something. But the level of competition that Chandler's having competitive fights with, or at least he's hanging in there with Oliveira and winning the 5th round, and then Pimblett's literally getting a gift on a silver platter, an early Christmas gift when Bobby Green is diving in head first, and he's bringing Tony Ferguson to a decision. And then you look at his other wins. What else are we talking about? Jared Gordon, where he lost that fight. I think that the reason why people are picking Pimblett is mostly because it's this is just the ebb and flow of their careers. You know, Paddy's going up and he's passing the test. And at one time we didn't think he was good and we thought he was terrible. At another time we were like, you know what? He's not so bad. I actually think he's kind of underrated. And now, obviously, the next step would be saying, well, Pimblett's going to crack himself into the top 8. Well, Pimblett's, obviously he's going to get into the top 10. I think you got to admit at this point, Pimblett really good. Because Bobby Green threw himself into a submission? I'm not ready to say that. I am not ready to say, well, obviously we used to think he's not that great. People were saying he would never be a top 10, but now that Green fluked himself into a submission and, Tony Ferguson gave him a tough, gritty scrap in moments and was a tough out on the ground, Pimblett's definitely going to be up there with the big boys, right? I don't think so. And I think that's the main reason why people are picking Pimblett. And again, you could say, well, I think Pimblett can land a head kick, and for sure that's possible. But dude, I think Chandler, even if you have patient Michael Chandler, I think he's going to beat Paddy Pimblett this time. Every single time I've picked Michael Chandler, he's lost. I've gotten a lot of Chandler fights wrong. I picked Dan Hooker to beat him. And then I picked Michael Chandler to beat Poirier. I picked Michael Chandler to beat Oliveira in the first fight. I did pick Oliveira in the last fight. I thought he was going to finish Chandler. He had a great performance. So I got that one right. And then obviously I picked Michael Chandler to beat Ferguson. And I think I picked him to beat Gagey, though. So I've gotten a lot of them wrong. This is a risky pick because Chandler does tend to lose a lot of these fights. But this is a huge step down in competition. Pimblett does not have the same wrestling threat that Oliveira has. He's big, he's strong, he's got the same sort of strength, but again, he doesn't have the same dangerous striking to set it up. And it's not like we're talking about Chandler being out of the cage for 2 years. He fought in November, he didn't get finished, he didn't take that much damage, he decisively lost, and I could see Pimblett out-grappling him in moments, but I think that, again, if you look at the way Michael Chandler was put on the ground, it's because Oliveira's setting everything up with his really good Muay Thai. Great double legs, body lock takedowns. He's just a different level than Pimblett. And I think Pimblett and Chandler, they're going to be on the feet, and I don't see Pimblett shooting a double leg. I don't see him just shooting out in the open. He's going to be throwing the leg kicks, hard leg kicks. He's going to be whipping up a head kick every once in a while, hoping to catch Michael Chandler, hoping that he has a lapse of judgment. But I just think eventually these guys are going to be boxing a little bit, slugging, and I just see Chandler tagging him, and I see him hurting him, and I see him putting him away. So I'm going to go with Michael Chandler via a second round TKO or a first round TKO. I understand Pimblett's in his prime. I get that. But the win streak that he's on does not indicate to me that he is a top-ranked contender. And I don't think you need to be a top-ranked contender to beat Michael Chandler necessarily. You could be a Joel Alvarez, who's barely ranked. I think he would beat Michael Chandler. But Pimblett is still relatively one-dimensional. And you do have to take into account that they have been feeding him old fighters that are chinny, that are totally washed. And there's this idea that, I've seen some people say, well, people thought Green was going to knock him out. No, the fuck we didn't. Nope. Bobby Green is known for having pillow hands. Nobody thought that Green was going to knock Pimblett out. The idea was Green would be able to stuff Pimblett's takedowns because he's got okay wrestling defense, and he would piece him up. But there was always a chance that Pimblett could have chinned Green as well because Green has no chin. Michael Chandler, although he doesn't have the best chin and he's older, he has a better chin than Bobby Green. Okay, Bobby Green gets put out with a gust of wind these days. And again, he's much more dangerous on the feet, and he is a better grappler. And it's Paddy's on a win streak, but it's Ferguson, decision, Bobby Green, just gave him that win on a silver platter. I'm not seeing Pimblett beat the crap out of someone that's really impressive. I think Joel Alvarez would beat Michael Chandler. I think Dan Hooker in a rematch could beat Michael Chandler. I think Mateusz Gamrot could beat Michael Chandler. I think Pimblett is one-dimensional. I think his striking, people are going to overrate it just because he's been getting by. But it's again, you look at the Ferguson fight, dude. Ferguson's out here and he's doing things on the feet against Pimblett. I think Chandler's just a different level when it comes to the striking. I could be wrong. Do not take this as Pimblett can't win this fight. I'm not saying that. I know that he can win this fight. I know that he has a great submission game. I know that he's got good grappling. I know he can win a decision. And I know he can chin Michael Chandler. I get that. I'm just saying I think that it's more likely that Michael Chandler beats up Paddy Pimblett on the feet and Pimblett doesn't get a really slick takedown because he's not really been showing slick takedowns. He's got good judo. He's got a good judo throw 100%, but that seems to be about it. So I'm going with Michael Chandler to knock out Paddy Pimblett in this fight. Yeah, I was picking Paddy, but then I realized I'm really just picking him because, well, the vibe has shifted to Pimblett, and now Pimblett's like, he's a real contender all of a sudden. Like, I don't buy that he's a real contender yet. The UFC's been giving him the easiest matchups, and this is the kind of fight he can win because Chandler is, not got the best fight IQ. If Oliveira had chinned Michael Chandler in the first round, then maybe I would pick him, and he did get dominated in that fight, but Chandler was still not just getting completely bulldozed in every instance against Oliveira. And Oliveira is so much more of a problem than Pimblett. So much more of a problem. Pimblett's got his hands down, his chin up in the air, terrible boxing. Chandler's going to win this fight. As we get on to the main event, Alexander Volkanovski versus Diego Lopez. I'm picking Diego Lopez by 50-45. I think just Volk is too old. He's too slow. And Lopez is just going to win that belt, man. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'm just joking around. Not so fast. Alexander Volkanovski is putting a stop to Diego Lopez's win streak. And he's going to TKO him in round 4 or round 3. He's going to show him layers. Lopez is not ready for the layers of Volkanovski, right? And if you've been seeing Alexander Volkanovski's vlogs, I don't think I've ever seen Volk in the shape that he's in now. Like Volkanovski, we saw him in his prime, Holloway trilogy and all this stuff. I've never seen Volkanovski in this shape. I've never seen him this locked in. All right. Shredded to the gills, extremely locked in. And we're going to talk about Volkanovski's lapse of judgment in his last couple of fights. Because I don't know if you guys have noticed this in the Makhachev rematch. He looked kind of switched on, but, he was off the couch, wasn't really there, man. Makhachev slept in that head kick, right? Just snuck it in there. Bit of a lapse of judgment from Volk, but just a beautifully placed kick. A beautifully placed kick. But here's the thing. Against Topuria, Volkanovski was talking to him, emoting on him, like smiling at him. I mean, there were multiple times in the fight where Volk lands a good shot and looks at him like, oh yeah, I got you there, right? And then, there was that one moment where Ilia Topuria let him know my time will come. My time will come very soon. And he eventually knocked him out. And he also knocked him out by moving forward and forcing Volkanovski into the fence, trapping him there and checkmating him, which is something that Diego Lopez doesn't do. Okay? But the two things I want to talk about first before we get into the layers and how Volkanovski is going to win this fight and how he can lose this fight is that was uncharacteristic of Volk. Okay? And I'm not saying he lost because of that. I'm just saying Volkanovski in the Ilia Topuria fight was just doing a whole lot of showboating and smiling. And I understand Volk does that in his fights. He did that in the Max Holloway trilogy a couple of times, but he was doing that when he was cutting Max open and dominating him and way faster than him. And when he had already established a serious speed advantage against Topuria, it was a competitive fight. And Volk was anytime Volk would get something, he was, giving Ilia the salute. Hey, I got you there, And listen, he got checkmated in that fight, got knocked out, but that's not an indication of somebody that's incredibly switched on the way he is right now. And I'm hearing Volkanovski say things like, the only way you're going to beat me is if you're going to catch me. All right? And again, we're going to talk about the Topuria fight because I don't believe Topuria just caught him, right? Topuria forced Volkanovski into that position. But from what I'm seeing from Volk, best shape he's ever been in. If you've been seeing the vlogs, this dude is literally, he looks like, he's in better shape than he was in the Max Holloway trilogy, okay? And there's just a different level of intensity that I see Volkanovski have right now. And he knows this is the second KO loss he's just taken in a row. 2 KOs in a row. The only way he's been beat badly in the UFC, of course he lost to Makhachev in the first fight, close decision, but the only way he's been decisively beat is by brutal KOs. And he knows going into this, Diego Lopes is dangerous. And he's got, the big meaty hooks, and he's got that right hand, left hook, big right, left hook. That's basically Diego Lopez's bread and butter. Right, left, right? That's what Diego does. And he's got a granite chin. He's got that grit down style. And Volk knows I cannot get caught by this guy. That's how he beats me. If I don't get caught with this big punch, I'm winning this fight. I think we're going to see a Volk that's so switched on, you're not going to see a single emote in this early going of the fight, okay? Volk's not going to be smiling at him. He's not going to be, oh yeah, he's not going to be doing any of that stuff. He's going to be doing all that type of stuff that he needs to do to win this fight, all right? This is the thing. Volk seemed too chill in the Topuria fight. Too chill, like he was having a good time. No, dude. I think we're going to see the Volk that fought Yair. The Volkanovski going into the Yair fight was like unbelievably aware of that any moment this guy can, scissor kick me. He's going to do a spinning question mark elbow and I'm out cold snoozing on the canvas. We didn't see any fucking emotes from this guy. Also, the way that Diego Lopes hurts people is they get into the pocket. Like, he's a counter striker for the most part. You look at how he hurt Brian Ortega. Ortega just waltzes through double jab, and while he's throwing his first jab, Diego Lopes, right hand, big left hook, right? Same thing in the third round when he hurt Ortega. Ortega's moving forward, just chilling in the pocket. Simpleton's game, simple man's game. Let me just throw a 1-2, 1-2. And then Diego Lopes, big counter. He's a counter striker. That's how he hurts people. All right? And he's got some vicious leg kicks as well, which is going to be an issue for Volk. He's got really hard head kicks too. But for the most part, he's catching people that are just walking into that boxing range trying to exchange with him. I think if Volkanovski does that in the first round, he's getting slept out cold. Okay? If Volkanovski fucks around and tries to outbox him and get into the pocket and have, a Marty Lewis style slip, dip, and rip in the middle, he's going to get caught because Diego Lopes is unbelievably fast. He sits on his punches, and that the combination, right hand, left hook, it's like the speed of light, very fast. He's going to get slept if he does that. I think that Volkanovski is going to be the rangy outside fighter in this one. I think he's going to be throwing a lot of the lead kicks to the legs. I think he's going to be snapping the jab and floating around and stinging him up, right? And I think that that's how Volkanovski is going to approach the striking. Sit behind his jab. Every once in a while, we'll see that big right hand into the lead hook that Volkanovski throws, right? It almost looks like a right hand into a jab. We'll see that if Diego misses something big. I think Volk knows he can't fuck around in the first round and make a mistake. He needs to take this slow. He needs to sit behind strikes that are not going to leave himself open. Low-risk strikes. And I think we're going to see him shoot a takedown in the first. And this is what I said in my prediction. Volk should not be striking with this guy. He's going to have to at some point. He's going to have to in the first round in the feel-out process. But I think him and his team are very smart, and I think they're incredibly confident about their ground game. And I think that Volk is going to be aware that that is the move. Like Diego Lopes, he gasses out in his fights. He's incredibly dangerous early on. How do we limit his chances to catch me with something big? Because if you're looking at Diego Lopes in the later rounds, completely different fighter. Totally different fighter, right? If you look at Diego Lopes, round 2 of the Ige fight, round 3 of the Ortega fight, round 2 of the Ortega fight, Lopes is like, he's literally looking like 50% of who he was in the first round. Just sitting there, kind of chilling, and every once in a while, or 1-2. He resorts, or he gets rendered into a very simpleton-like fighter. And I think Volk knows that. And I think Volkanovski heats up as fights go on and knows that, as a fight goes on, then he can find those openings like he did to Yair, where struggling with Yair early on, third round, he's taking him down, taking the wind out of his sails. He's able to find those openings. Then he's able to do that switch stance, lead hook. Beautiful, beautiful stuff. I think Volk knows that. I think his team knows that. He's been doing the specifics with Craig Jones. if you don't know, Tread Jones is also another guy that Volk has been training with. Not only Craig Jones, but Tread Jones. No, I'm just kidding. I just misspoke. But not only has he been doing the specifics with Craig Jones, he's been also getting into the weeds with Aljo, right? Which is a different thing. Totally different thing, getting into the weeds with lighter man skill Aljamain Sterling. Volk's prepared for this fight. He has some of the best grappling on earth, and he beat the fuck out of Brian Ortega on the ground. You look at Diego Lopez grappling with Ortega on the ground in the first round, not able to do anything. Nothing. You look at Volkanovski versus Ortega on the ground, Volkanovski beat the crap out of him and damn near finished him twice. Okay? This guy was able to scramble with Islam Makhachev. This guy was able to take down Yair Rodriguez easily and keep him down and beat him up. Volk is going to take down Diego Lopez in the first round. He's going to find the takedown. Again, best shape of his life. Diego Lopez is a big guy. He's going to be strong, but Volk has the tricks up his sleeve. He's got the judo trips. He's got the, the hand fighting knowledge, the specifics up against the fence, the cage wrestling. And I think Volkanovski's taken Diego Lopez down. And I think we're in for a slow first round. I think Volk, I don't think he's going to 10-8 Diego Lopez in the first. I think that Diego Lopez is going to be throwing up submissions, and Volk is going to, he's not going to be in the Brian Ortega submission hold where it's like 95% locked in, but it'll be like 50% locked in. Volk's going to have to, posture up and sort of, not make a mistake and just hold his ground, stand his ground. And then eventually he'll get his arm out of the arm bar and he'll hover max, which is what he likes to do against these rangy grapplers that are throwing up triangles. He'll hover max, which is where he kind of doesn't fall into the jiu-jitsu game. And instead what he does is he just sort of, he sort of layers over them like a blanket, And he just sort of like keeps him down. Volk is one of those built different guys. When he took down Yair Rodriguez, he freaking carried him across the octagon on the ground. So Volk is built different on the ground. And I think he takes the wind out of Diego Lopez's sails. I think he's going to noogie him with his elbow. I think he's going to really noogie him like he was doing to Yair, just opening up cuts, right? I think every once in a while we're going to see that classic Volk hook to the body and hook upstairs on the ground, right? We're going to see that in like the last 30 seconds. First couple minutes on the ground, it's going to be like a stalemate. It's going to be Volk just defending. Like, okay, what's this guy going to throw up? He's Diego Lopez is like, he's a wild man on the ground. Last 30 seconds, Volkanovski's going to be noogieing him because he's not going to have the opportunity to just posture up and rain down because Diego Lopez is not going to be gassed yet. He's still going to be there, able to throw up submissions. Volkanovski is going to have to be careful, but he'll be able to sort of noogie him on the ground, right? And every once in a while, sneak in one of those couple of hooks. Second round. yeah, let's go. Second round, dude. Second round. Volk's going to come out. He's going to be looking a little bit tired because he was grappling the first. And Lopez, he's going to realize he lost the first round. He's going to feel his arms getting heavy. He's tired. He's going to really want to go out there and get a moment. He's going to go out there. He'll see Volkanovski sort of recovering, revamping his energy. Diego's going to feel tired, but he's going to feel it's necessary. Okay, I got to do something. I'm going to march forward. He's going to be very aggressive second round. And I think Volkanovski is going to clinch. And I think he's going to look for another takedown and get the other takedown, dude. And I think he's going to possibly get another takedown. But this time, like we've seen in Diego Lopez fights, Lopez gets tired, right? And what did we see second round of Movsar Evloev fight? Volkanovski is a better ground striker than Movsar. I mean, Movsar's a great grappler. Volkanovski's proven to be a better grappler because, again, he beat up Makhachev, beat the fuck out of Ortega. He's actually finished people on the ground. Early UFC career, finished a couple of guys on the ground. So what did we see in the second round of the Movsar fight after Diego Lopez was starting to sort of tire out? Movsar started beating him up. So this is where we're going to see Volkanovski be able to posture up more, hover max, and then start raining down ground and pound strikes. Raining down ground and pound strikes. Third round. Diego's going to look tired. Volkanovski's going to look like the champ. Volkanovski's going to be bouncing around, just bouncing off the walls with energy. And Diego Lopez, you're going to look across the octagon when they pan over to him, and he's going to be breathing heavy, looking at Volk like, man, I gotta finish this guy. I gotta knock him out. Diego Lopez is going to go out there, right? And this is where we see Volkanovski start to pick him apart. Chop him to the leg, lead kick to the leg, right? He's going to float around. He's going to sting him up. Yeah, he's going to start stinging him around. And and then, dude, Volk's going to start landing big ones on him. This is what I'm telling you. Volkanovski, like at this point, Diego Lopez is going to be a simple man's game where he's sort of slow. And this is how Diego Lopez fights in like round 3 when he's tired. Like round 1, he's Rafael Fiziev in every moment where Fiziev is throwing his hooks. Every moment, that's Diego Lopez. Round 3, Diego Lopez is, all right, you punch, I'll punch. Now you're going to punch, and now I'll punch. He's so predictable. He's so predictable, man. Volkanovski's going to be chewing this guy up. Lead kicks. Jabbing him up. Sweet pea special. Right hand. And then Volkanovski's really going to start sinking in big gnarly overhands. He's going to be landing that classic Volkanovski right hand lead hook. And then he's going to be cracking him. And this is what I'm saying. 3rd or 4th round TKO, we're either going to see Volkanovski slip him onto something like what he was doing to Yair. He was switching stances on Yair, landed a lead kick to Yair, baiting out an attack from Yair, immediately switched stances and caught him with the lead right hook. He's going to do one of those creative setups to a guy like Diego, whose head is just going to be right on that center line because Diego Lopez, very simple man's game in those later rounds. He's going to be tired. Volk's going to be cracking him. And I think Volk's going to get him down, and I think he's going to finish him on the ground, TKO. Volkanovski is going to finish Diego Lopez round 3 or round 4 after taking the wind out of his sails. It's going to be a similar approach to that which we saw when he fought Yair. It's going to be tougher on the ground than it was versus Yair because not only is Diego bigger and stronger, but he's also just a better grappler off of his back as well. And we could see that, but his gas tank is just not good. Yair's got a better gas tank than Diego Lopez. So I'm telling you, if Volkanovski goes out there looking to box first round, just if he's out there smiling and waving and saying, oh yeah, I got you, he's going to get slept. But we're not seeing that. Volkanovski's going to be switched on. He's going to be seeing everything. He's going to be seeing Lopez, and he's going to be seeing the people behind him. He's going to be seeing the people in the bleachers. He's going to be the most aware person on the planet in this fight, not making a single mistake. Okay? He's going to be willing to eat the biggest body kick Diego Lopez has ever thrown in order to block that head kick that's coming up. And he's going to take Diego Lopez down. Volk is a better grappler than Lopez. I'm so sick and tired of people underestimating Volk because he doesn't submit people. And you know what? As I said in my prediction video, I wouldn't mind an Alexander Volkanovski submission, like a head and arm triangle, a shorter man, stubby man submission. I wouldn't mind that. Doing the Islam Makhachev approach, where Makhachev controls you and waits for you to explode up to your feet. And in the process of that, you sort of give up your neck, and Makhachev is able to capitalize off of that. And you sort of put yourself into one of his submissions. Like he sort of walks you on to a submission in that way. I would love to see that from Volkanovski. I think that training with Aljo and Craig Jones, I would love to see him go for a submission because Diego Lopez is not going to expect that. Okay? He's not going to expect that at all. But I'm just tired of people underestimating Volk's grappling because he doesn't like have the submission game or he doesn't throw up like triangles off of his back. You know, Diego Lopez, he's a really good submission guy. He's very dangerous, but who have we seen him finish on the ground? I know he's given Movsar fits. I know he's capable of finishing high-level guys, but Volkanovski will not get submitted by this guy. Just because Volk is short and stubby, like short, stubby people can't be good on the ground because they're not throwing up triangles off of their back. I don't get it. Volkanovski is a better grappler. So I think Volk is going to win this fight by a 3rd or 4th round TKO. He's getting this one done. He's going to win the belt. And what does that mean for his legacy if he beats Diego Lopez? Well, he would be the first ever UFC fighter to be able to win a championship fight above the age of 35 in the lighter weight classes. You know what really annoys me? When people cite those type of stats, but they're always like, yeah, only Tyron Woodley has ever won. It's like, dude, why are you even bringing up the welterweight division? They'll be like, yep, only 3 fighters in the history of the sport have ever won a title in the above the age of 36. It's like, dude, the stat is nobody has, if you want to surprise people and make it look difficult, the stat is nobody has ever won a title above the age of 35 from 155 and below. Why do they go up to welterweight where you have 2 wins for Woodley? Like, it's a totally different division. I don't get why they do that. Yeah, they'll be like, yep, Woodley's got the 2. Why are you talking about the welterweight division? That's not the lighter weight classes. And you make the stat less daunting because of that. You know what I mean? But either way, yes, Ilia Topuria vacated the belt. So this would not necessarily be the biggest win for Volk to have, but it's essentially as good of a win as anybody would be given credit for if they were to beat Diego Lopez. Let's say Ilia Topuria doesn't vacate. If Ilia Topuria defends his belt against Diego Lopez at UFC 314 instead of Volk, that would be counted as a good, solid title defense because Diego Lopez is the most deserving contender aside from Mavzar. Beating Diego Lopez is essentially as good as beating Mavzar because they've had similar success in their careers. So this is basically just a really good win. It doesn't matter if Volkanovski is not technically the best featherweight in the world because Ilia Topuria left and he technically beats him, right? Ilia beating Diego Lopez is a good title defense. So Volk beating Diego Lopez, even if it wasn't for a belt, it would still be as good of a win. It's just another really solid name on his resume. In fact, it's better than the Yair win because Diego Lopez is more well-rounded and Volk is older. And, you know, that does, in a way, make this more impressive. Volkanovski beating Diego Lopez at the age of 36, basically, coming off of 2 KO losses in a row, is more impressive than Volk beating Diego Lopez if Volk were in his prime. It just is. So I think this will keep Volkanovski in the top 5. Will it put him above Makhachev? Will it put him above GSP? Will it put him above Jones? I don't know. Definitely not Jones and Makhachev. Will it really bump him up 5 spots? No. But it does make his resume look a lot better because, you know, a loss drops him down. If he loses to Diego Lopez, even though he's older, it does drop him down. If he wins, he keeps his spot or moves up 1 spot, depending on, you know, I think Volkanovski, I think I may have had him at number 3 on my GOAT list. Maybe GSP is still number 3 and Volk's number 4. So I think then there's an argument for Volk maybe passing GSP, and people are going to be like, oh, no. Diego Lopez, Brian Ortega, TKZ, Yair Rodriguez, Jose Aldo, Max Holloway, Chad Mendes. How is that not an amazing resume? But either way, yeah, beating Diego Lopez is the same thing as any other person beating Diego Lopez. It's a really solid win. It's a legitimate win for any champion. Any champion beats Diego Lopez, that's a legitimately like great title defense. So it would do the same for Volkanovski's legacy as it would for anyone else. Doesn't make him the GOAT if he wins this fight. But yeah, dude, like I'm picking Volk. I think this is the kind of fight that he can win. Even though this is like one of those things where no one's ever been able to do it in a championship fight. Listen, a lot of these old heads have been having decent performances, you know, and I think the reason why people can't win the belt in the lighter weight classes when they're 35 is because the champions are usually like the best by a long shot, right? Merab, Topuria is just better than everyone, okay? The Volk can't beat a Topuria because Topuria truly is like the built different guy of today, whereas Volk used to be that guy. But Diego Lopez is not as dominant as a Topuria. And so, like, I've seen fighters that are, you know, what's his name? I forget his name. The guy that beat Raumbetsky. Like, fuck, I forget his name. He got TKO'd by Mateusz Gamrot. You guys know who I'm talking about. Just got beat by Grant Dawson. Anyway, Carlos Diego Ferreira, like one of the best performances of his entire career was when he was 39 against a surging contender who was sort of similar to Diego Lopez, right? Good grappling, dangerous on the feet. I don't see why Volkanovski can't have a great performance in this one. He looks to be in great shape. He's switched on mentally. There are layers to this game. And Diego Lopez, after the first round, is just nowhere near the same fighter in the second, in the third, okay? He's just not. He resorts to very simple 1-2s, basic strikes, much slower. Still dangerous, still carries his power, but Volk should win this one. If Diego wins this one, that's a big win for him. That's a huge win. And then we're going to see a really good fight between him and Movsar. So I'm going with Volkanovski, 3rd or 4th round TKO. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Until next time.